I got a couple less minutes than I had before, but I'm going to fill the gaps for you, Barry. You go a little long, I go a little short. We get everybody to their coffee. Okay. I'm going to try to weave a couple of stories together because I think so many of us find in our gut and our heart and soul that stories really bring us along. And early this morning, when Greg was talking about the dogs, I don't know, any of you dog owners? Anybody have a dog out there? Yeah? I got a 2.5-year-old golden retriever, and he's my best friend. I even talk. I have a special voice I use for him. I'm not going to do that up here because it's embarrassing. But I've pretty much given all the inanimate objects in my life a voice. My 9-month-old son has a voice. My daughter's a big stuffed animal person, and she has these penguins, and they all have voices. But yeah, when he told the dog story, it kind of touched me, in my heart, in my soft spot. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to spend the first couple minutes letting you guys get to know me. We're going to become friends. I'm going to embarrass myself. Then later on when you see me at the concert tonight, you can say, hey, Daniel, you're the ... I'm about to tell you. So technology really, it's amazing how much it's changed our lives. And I'm going to try to weave this in here. So yesterday I'm getting up and I'm getting ready to travel to Austin. And everybody that's traveled for a while, and most of you probably do travel, remember what the travel experience looks like. If you traveled 10 or 15 years ago, you remember having to make sure you had your tickets ready. You had like a folder maybe, your itinerary. Where am I staying in my hotel, my rental car? You had to have all your stuff together and planned because the only way that you could make sure you got from where you were to where you were going is if you really were prepared to travel. Well, now that I travel every week, I'm lucky if my suitcase is actually unpacked the morning I'm ready to leave from the week before because I haven't actually gotten myself ready yet. And that's kind of what happened this week. This week it was, Monday morning, I'm heading down here to Austin, and I'm barely packed. It's my flight's at 10 a.m. I whip out the suitcase. I put, the same shirt and my very stylish 3-stripe shoes. I want everybody to know I think they're very stylish, very Austin of me. And I get myself packed up, and I get myself ready, and I pull up my phone. I go to Lyft, right? And I did use Uber. I'm boycotting because I'm one of those strong-willed social advocate people. I go to Lyft and I call my black car, and about 20 minutes later, my car's in my driveway. I'm getting in the car. I'm heading to the airport. I go in. I look at my American Airlines app. I'm flying American Airlines because I didn't want to get the crap beat out of me on the plane. And I pull up the app, and the app even tells me, it says, the commute's going to be about 1 hour, 22 minutes to the airport. So now the intelligence of the app from American Airlines, they're saying, we're not only going to offer you, your information about your flight, but we're thinking about your experience here. We're thinking about the travel, the time it's going to take you to get to the airport. It told me how long it's going to be and when I'm going to get there. So this is like little things that are happening in my life with technology, but you're not thinking about technology. You're thinking about your your life, your experience that you're having. And so, I arrive at the airport, and of course I don't have a printed ticket. Does anybody print a ticket anymore? No, you pull out your phone, get your app. I got my little thing, I get into line, scan my thing, I get through security, I go to the gate. All this happened. I even got upgraded. I know. It was a very, very big day for me. I know they weren't going to drag me out of first class. That was not going to happen. All right, I'm going to try to use that joke one more time before this presentation's over and see if I can get you guys to keep laughing. So, they didn't drag, I got into, upgrade, and it just alerted me on my phone, hey, you've been upgraded. It's like, holy cow, my day's already getting better. All technology. You're talking about app, you're talking about cloud, you're talking about data, you're talking about analytics, you're talking about loyalty programs. All this stuff's happening, but you're not once thinking about the technology. You're thinking about the experience. These are all the little things in my life. So I get to my seat, right in front of my seat, big screen, jackpot, because you all know if you've flown long enough, especially if you fly American, they have those old DC-10, the old planes, just all their old planes, and they didn't have any technology. They didn't even have sound for music. They have nothing in them. But I got the new plane, this new 737s that they have with the full system, and right there on the screen, the mobile technology, I had the movies, and it said a little button that says, "In theaters now." Jackpot, jackpot, big screen. I was supposed to be writing the foreword for my friend's book. That, by the way, he needed today. But of course, you get on the plane, the new technology, touch screen, squirrel. Holy crap, I got to play with this thing. So I start scrolling through the movies, and I'm going to tie this story together. Watch. Collateral Beauty, in theaters now. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Las Vegas. I was at IBM Amplify listening to Will Smith on stage tell the story of Collateral Beauty and talk about this movie. And between seeing the trailers, seeing him speak, I'm like, I have to see this. So laptop back in the bag, back in the overhead compartment. This forward's going to get written later. Sorry, buddy. But I did pull out the phone. I messaged him to let him know, hey, squirrel popped up. Got to go. I'll write this thing tomorrow. And so I turn on the movie. And now all this has happened. I'm now streaming live a movie from an airplane that's in the theaters. And I'm enjoying this experience. And not getting my ass kicked in the process. And so many of these good things have happened to me. That was 3, by the way. I'm done. That joke won't come up again. Because of what technology's empowered. But the beauty of it is not one time was I thinking about technology. Now, just a little bit more about personal and getting to know me, because I did promise you'd have something to embarrass me with later. I was a pitcher. Any baseball players in the room? I know I've told a few of you about my soccer experience. Right back there, we've talked about soccer. But when I was really young, I played baseball. And I was a left-handed pitcher, and I was a pretty good pitcher. But I had this little problem. I used to cry if anyone got a hit on me. And yeah, it was really bad. It stuck with me for a long time, well beyond the years. I was like 12 years old. I'd pitch. If I lost the game, I would start crying. And somewhere around 15 years old, after my father had, emasculated me enough times about the fact that I was crying while playing sports, I stopped crying. And now, 3 children and a wedding later, I still haven't shed a tear. Okay? It's like it just, somewhere in me, that whole capability died. But I was watching the movie Collateral Beauty, and I'm not going to spoil the movie for anybody, but I'll give you 2 pointers. 1, I recommend you watch it. Very, very good movie. And 2, I was bawling my eyes out in my seat, 3A, on the American Airlines flight, watching A Collateral Beauty. And I sent a message to my wife. And I said to my wife, I said, we have to watch this movie. This movie's so good. And she's like, okay, is it in the theater? And I go, why would we go to the theater? So watch this. I'm going to tie this all together now. I go, we'll just stream it. But you notice what she didn't ask me is, do you want to go rent the DVD? Anybody rent a DVD from Blockbuster lately? Because you're seeing these little disruptions. So, I just shift into this little story here is this whole way we consume, the whole way we engage, the whole way we live with content. It's all changing. And what happened with Blockbuster is just one of these great stories. Nobody in this room has rented a movie lately from Blockbuster because they're out of business. And they're gone. And people say, we hear these stories about this disruption, and you go, is this the exception or is this the rule? In 2009, the CEO of Blockbuster Video, Jim Keyes, was interviewed. And he was asked the question about a little company. You know who I'm going to say? Barry talked about him. Who was he asked about? He was asked about a company called Netflix. And he goes, are you worried about Netflix? What do you think he said? No. He goes, they have a really good search capability on their site. But overall, we're the biggest, we're the strongest, we have the largest presence, the biggest brand. We're going to be fine. In 2012, Blockbuster Video was closing their last 300 stores. So when I asked this question, anybody rented a movie from Blockbuster, if you rose your hand, you're living 5 years ago, or you're making up stories. But they're not the exception. This has happened to many great companies. Anyone in here snapping photos of me with your Kodak? In the 1970s, Kodak had digital capabilities. They understood where it was going. But they were busy doing something else. They were busy protecting their turf. In the 1970s, Kodak was capable of taking a digital photograph. But they never got it to market. And then eventually they did. If you guys remember, in the 2000s, Kodak did put out cameras, didn't they? But what happened? By then it was too late. And you see it here. Anybody in here going to send a tweet out with their BlackBerry? There's going to be one, right? There's always one, because I know they still have a phone. Now, how about your Nokia? So I'm going to weave one more story in here. My first concert was Blues Traveler. And in 1993, when I went and saw Blues Traveler, after the concert, I went to a Tower Records and I bought the DVD or the CD. Anybody here lately bought a CD from Tower Records? But these companies, they're all big, powerful, strong brands. They own their markets. But what happened to them? And really what happens to these companies is that they failed to change. So you hear this theme of agility that's going on. You hear about agility in the cloud and agility with technology. But when he talked about me talking about the human side of technology, a lot of the agility of companies comes down to this. It comes down to people and culture. It comes down to community. It comes down to building loyalty, a brand, and passion and love. But failing to change is what kills companies. And you'll see some of the statistics out there. In the first 10 years of this millennium, 40% of the Fortune 500 companies were replaced. And analyst predictions out there, not just my own, believe that up to 70% could be gone in just a few years. That's how fast disruption's taking place. So yes, everything Barry said and everything Greg said about technological change is true. But the biggest struggle that so many companies have with dealing with this is the company's cultures aren't prepared to change. When new technology is presented to us, that doesn't just mean we get on board. Being adaptable. And we'll talk more about that when I jump into these trends. So let's talk about what else all these companies had in common, besides the fact that they were the incumbents. So I talked about, you heard BlackBerry, and you hear about Blockbuster, and you hear about Barnes & Nobles. But I found a couple things. The first thing they stopped doing was they stopped taking risks. They became really comfortable. And that's why you're seeing that the length of time that a company was an incumbent on the Fortune 500 continued to get shorter and shorter and shorter with each period of technological disruption. They stopped taking risks. They started just doing what worked for them. Blockbuster made money for a long time renting movies. BlackBerry had the most popular product in the enterprise. All of you. Any of you never use a BlackBerry? There's like 2 of you. You're the guy that used the Palm, aren't you? Thumbs up. I knew it. The second thing, they stopped being agile. And when I show you the third thing, this will really start to make sense to you. Because some of these companies did try to change. They just didn't succeed. Because what happened was the experience that they created, the experience that once made them magical, the experience of a Friday night with mom and dad at Blockbuster Video perusing the walls and the shelves to pick out your movie. Everyone here remembers that, right? That was freaking exciting. That was exciting. That took a backseat to imitation. When Netflix came to market, what did they start with? What was the first thing they offered to people? Mail order DVDs. That is not that sexy. They sent DVDs in the mail. But what did they do to experience that was so important? What was the thing that drove you crazy after you'd rent a movie?
You have to take it back.
Taking it back. And if you didn't, late fees. This crowd is amazing. It's almost like I planned you guys. You'd get comfortable, you ate your popcorn, you watched your movie, you went, so you're like, crap, it's got to be back by noon the next day, so the next day I could rent it. Well, of course, the next morning you didn't want to run back. The last thing you want to do is jump in your car, return the movie. So they fixed that. The movie got sent to your door. No late fees. Return it whenever you want. You just don't get another movie until you return the last movie. And the most work you had to do was put it in the envelope they provided you, put it in the mailbox, send it back. That's great. Works very, very well. You know who else did that same service? Blockbuster. IMITATION. But do you think that was Netflix's end game? How many of you have seen the movie? We started with cinema. Let's weave this story back together. How many of you have seen the movie Wag the Dog? A few of you? It's good. This is a participation speech, guys. You're going to have to get involved. So the whole idea, right, is, and this, you see this all over the world now in politics, is, we create an event to distract us from what we want people to really see so they can see something else. Well, Netflix was busy building out their cloud strategy, their vision for the future of streaming, right? And Blockbuster was busy copying what Netflix did, and they got really, really good at mailing DVDs. But the problem was Netflix that was never their plan. Their plan was, while they were getting their cloud off the ground, we're going to build an audience, build a mailing list, build a customer base, and then we're going to launch the cloud. So Blockbuster, the biggest, strongest, most fit company in 2009 in the entire industry, copied everything, tried to bring to market the same offerings, same products. They even launched a streaming service. How'd that go for them? Failure. Epic failure. So the companies, and what Netflix did was they were busy taking intelligent risks. And that's the big thing. Taking risks isn't the key, it's taking intelligent risks. So we talk about data, analytics, information, using information about our customers. What can we do? What are the little innovations we can do? Their first intelligent risk was offering a service a new way. Will people want them in the mail? The second thing is, will people adopt to streaming? That didn't happen overnight. That's taken time. People don't realize, but Netflix is nearly 20 years old. We tell this story like they're a brand new company. But they continuously took intelligent risks and made little and ongoing innovations. And they've had their PR faux pas. They had their imperfections. They raised their prices. They pissed everybody off. But you know what? How many customers for Netflix are in this room right now? Yeah, raise your hands, people. You guys make my stories good. And they constantly, and this is one more thing that is an underlying theme of everything I will talk about for the rest of this presentation, is they constantly focus on meeting and exceeding the consumer expectations. Digital transformation, I have not used that word yet. I'm going to use it right now. Digital transformation revolves around customer experience. We change, we adopt, we invest, we partake, we participate, whatever word you want to use for our investments in technology, in order to create experiences that match what the market expects because of what technology can do. That's it. If you think consumer first, if you think customer first, if you layer the technology with the customer in mind, you will have a much greater chance of continuing your digital transformation in a way that matters. You cannot throw technology at people problems. You cannot shift culture by throwing technology at your biggest problems. But when you have a strong culture, people will adopt the technology. They will embrace it, they will use it, and you will see a greater transformation take place, not only inside your company, but within the community that is your customers. And so with all this going on, the question becomes for all these businesses that are out there is, what do we do forward? And I always say, if you really want to simplify it, digital transformation is about preparing your company to not only survive, but thrive in an age of rapid technological change. And in short, what I found is that basically there are those three things. The winners, they take risks, they adapt, they innovate, and they disrupt faster. And disruption is one of those words that's so hard. It's a catch-all phrase. We love using it if you're in the valley, right? If you're out Barry in your neighborhood. If you're here in Austin, we love to use the word disruption. But I say, there's big disruption and there's little disruption. Not every company needs to be the next Uber, Lyft, the next Netflix. Sometimes it's just about doing the little things a little bit better than the rest. But that can be disruptive. And they say a third of people expect your company to respond to them within 30 minutes to any complaint or comment that they make on a digital platform. I say if you're in an industry of slow responders and laggards, just being faster to respond to people, just using systems, technology, monitoring, can be a disruptive shift to the industry. It can be that simple. And for other industries, you need to make big, sweeping change to be disruptive. But the winners do it. So I got credit for writing the most read article on trends in digital transformation. And I was asked today, in the time I have left, to share with you the 10 trends. Now, I want to make sure before I share with you guys these 10 trends that you understand that this is not all-encompassing. This is not every trend in digital transformation. And these are my opinions. Another thing is, the last presentations have done a tremendous job of giving you the long reach, looking out 10, 20, 30 years. I did something that's much, I'm not going to say riskier. Yeah, I will. I'm going to say it was much riskier. I predicted what's going to happen in the next year. And the reason I did that is not because I love playing the futurist card. And I've always said to people, I will make some really bold predictions about what's going to happen 20 years from now. And the reason I'll do that is because when I'm wrong, and I will be wrong more than I will be right, no one's going to remember that I said it. But when you make predictions about what's going to happen in the next 12 months, people tend to call you out when you're wrong because they remember. So I basically focused on 10 things. And remember, everything I say is kind of through that lens of the human experience. So you guys in this room, I would guess 98% of you are technically more gifted than me, meaning that you could probably get behind a behind a server in a storage capacity and in an analytics tool, and you would be able to outmaneuver me. I'm focused on how these things work and how they impact our experience. So we're going to focus on that lens. It's the human experience that we're focusing on through these trends. Number one, and it matches what I just talked to you guys about, the adaptability of your business will be what decides whether or not you're able to stay successful and thrive into the future. Now, Greg, you missed when I told the story about your dogs. But I shared with them, I said, these personal stories, they're so heartwarming. I said, that's what people are going to remember from today. It's funny, because we'll do a lot of really good tech talk, but we always remember those personal stories. Culture is a lot like that. So you look at your vision, your success, those words that you used at the end, and I said, building a culture that's strong, a culture that believes in change, a culture that believes in the vision is really what leads to technology adoption. And this isn't just my opinion. See, digital transformation is two words, digital being technology, transformation being people, that have been kind of glued together to give a new terminology for change management in the modern era. Change is hard. In fact, The Atlantic, you ever read The Atlantic? They did a study of the 100 things that people fear the most. Did you know that people fear technological change more than they fear death itself? If you can build a culture that can change fast, you can build a culture that can survive and thrive through robotics, automation, AI, through all of this. The user experience. So I talked about how digital transformation is really all about experience, about the customer experience, about focusing on customers. Why do we choose Netflix? Why do we choose Lyft or Uber? Why do we choose the platform? Why do you choose ZENOSS? So much of it comes down nowadays is that platforms A, B, C, and D all do the same thing. And yeah, your salespeople like to tell you, they'll go into the features and functions and show you the one thing they do, and you do one thing they don't. But we really do choose our tools and our technologies based upon the experience, the user experience that it creates. If it creates a great user experience, we become more connected to that. We use it every day. In fact, we're willing to give up our most intimate, private details in exchange for a great user experience. Anybody on Facebook in this room? You can laugh because I know you're all on Facebook. You realize what you give up to use Facebook, right? You ever read your terms of services? I'll give you another thing. Next time you're in Messenger, put your headset on and tap your microphone. Do you know that in order to use Messenger or to use the photo sharing or to share videos, that you actually give them access to your microphone? So not only can they know what you type, but they can hear what you say. Remember, when the service is free, you're the product. But at the same time, nobody ever complains that the experience is too good, that a company did too much, that there's too much value in the service they provided. And that's why we put up with it. We're willing to trade our privacy and our data for a great user experience. And that's because it's one of the most important things in digital transformation. The next one, and because I don't have enough time to dig deeply into this one, is rapid innovation. So you saw some of the examples of the innovations that are going on in the technology. I want to talk about it from another lens. So I talked about the adaptability and the user experience. I want to talk about the lens of innovation in a culture. So in culture, what happens is businesses used to have what was called innovation cycles, and that would be the cycle between the time of wherever they are now to the next launch, the next innovative, the next release that they would have. In digital transformation, what they're finding and what our studies have found is that companies that focus on the ability to innovate faster and fail faster is kind of a cliche, but it's actually a roadmap to greater success and greater innovation, and here's why. If your innovation cycles used to happen in, say, 2-year periods of time, and you can cut your idea to launch to, say, 6 months, okay? What happens is you may fail more often because you were perhaps less prescriptive, you were able to test less, you had to take more risks, you had to put things into the market before you necessarily knew they were ready. But just do the simple math in your head. If you can take that 2-year cycle to a 6-month cycle, all of a sudden what happens is you can fail 3 times. And if you succeed on the 4th, you're still innovating at the same pace. But think of all the things you might have learned through those first 3 sets of failures. Faster innovation is one of the keys to digital transformation. Now, I use the word embrace the remote workforce, but what I'm really talking about here on the 4th trend is mobility. A lot of people have mobility confused for a product, for this. They talk about mobile devices. And digital transformation and mobility is about culture. It's about embracing what's possible because of technology, because of mobility. Think about remote workforces. How many of you guys have people not based in your corporate offices? If I had asked that same question 10 years ago, what do you think the answer would have been? Very, very few. It would have been one guy, and he'd also have a BlackBerry. But because of technology, we've opened the borders. We've opened the world up. And what I say is there's a few things that happen. One, we can be more productive, and we actually work harder. So as an entrepreneur, you recognize this. But you give people flexibility, and you give them trust, because mobility is like trust. You give them trust, and guess what happens? You go, you know what, they're not in the office 8 to 5. I can't control them. I can't touch them. You know what happens when people feel trusted, and you give them mobility, and you give them the tools they need to work from anywhere? They work more. They work more. Studies have shown 20, 30, and even 40% more. Because you know what they do? They're really, really happy that at 4 p.m. you let them be at their kid's soccer game. But then after dinner at 7 p.m., what are they doing? They're working again. So it's a win-win. Everybody wins. It's a change in culture. And that change in culture leads to greater productivity. Also, do you think the best talent is always located within 10 miles of your office? Even in the Silicon Valley, even in, what do you guys call this valley? You guys have a name for it, right? The Silicon Hills? It's very egomaniacal. Even here, I bet you anything that if you look at every position you're trying to fill, there are people out there that are more than 10, 20, and 30 miles away that could do a better job, that could be more responsive, more productive, and add more value to your company. Mobility as a culture, remote workforce, is a huge trend in terms of filling those positions, finding the best talent, and creating globally diverse companies that are more inclusive and that create stronger, more engaged communities. This trend was a little bit more risky for me, but I was in New York City the day that the Pokemon Go game came out. Any Pokemon Go players still? I think that one died a pretty hard death. Talk about disruption. But the day it came out, that was like I wish I'd have documented that day, like walking around the city. I mean, I'm always on my phone. I should have been videoing people because it was hilarious. I saw people walk into poles. I saw people walk into walls. I mean, the things I saw, I mean, you know, it's sad. I mean, people walked off cliffs, literally, playing that game. But what it told me and why it became part of my prediction about the trends for 2017 with AR and VR continuing to be bigger is that people's desire to immerse themselves between the real world and the digital world in meaningful ways. So the Pokemon game was just a very, very rudimentary version of what augmented reality can do. But the willingness of people to participate said to me is we are looking for connections between our technology and our physical world. And I think that's going to be a greater trend. I think we're going to see movements back to contacts and glass. A lot of predictions basically say that this may be coming to its latest iterations. We may be seeing something different in terms of how we engage with information in the near future. And virtual reality, of course, I work with a French company called Dassault Systems, and I was able to be put behind the wheel of one of their cars that they were designing while I sat in a game chair on a desk with a headset on, and I was able to grab the joystick, open the doors, shift the car, drive, walk around outside of it, feel, change the wheels, the tires. And the thought to me is, this isn't future stuff. This is stuff that in the next year we're going to start to see is we're going to be able to virtually tour homes. We're going to be able to virtually test drive cars. We're going to be able to virtually experience. And things like video conferencing are going to move to a whole nother level of immersion as we're going to be able to use AR and VR as part of our collaboration experience in our business. I'm going to keep going, running. So the next trend is something I like to call the API economy. And to simplify this from a human standpoint is we use a lot of tools and technologies in our businesses. We have platforms for ERP. We have platforms for CRM. We have platforms for collaboration. We have platforms after platforms after platforms. Some are in the cloud. Some are on-premise. Companies like PayPal got it right. But companies are going to continue to think about how do we tie our technology to other meaningful technologies so that the systems can more collectively talk to one another, so that people aren't forced into platforms. The big tech companies for the longest time have loved the idea that we need to force you to use exclusively our products and our ecosystems. I believe in the future, and this may not be next year, but I believe sooner than later, we're going to see the APIs tying more of these systems together so that companies can be more agile. Because right now, if you have to re-up your system, you have to change softwares, change technologies, change platforms, no matter how great your culture is, the time is of the essence. So if we can tie together what works by adding what's new, we can be faster. And that's why I believe API and the API economy is important. This one you've heard about. I don't feel like I need to explain too much to you. But big data is still really in its infancy of usage. We talk about the term, and from the pundit standpoint, or professorial standpoint, we talk about the power of big data. But the stats show that most companies, anywhere from a third to half, depending on the surveys, aren't even using it. They are not even effectively using the data that's available to them. And in a lot of cases, they're not even using their system data effectively, let alone big data, social data, unstructured data, information from across the web that could be used at their disposal to better service their clients, to better develop their offerings. But that trend is going to change. The cloud, SaaS, tools, simple ways for companies to get involved in big data is going to become highly available and simpler to access for companies than ever before in this coming year. And part of it's going to be impacted even more in the next year by this trend, the Internet of Things. Now, you heard 100 billion sensor devices out there. The human side of it for me is this. It's information. We talk about what do brands want from you? They want your information. So when you're on Facebook, when you're on Twitter, when you're using your social apps, when you're sharing and writing and putting all this information out about you, what you're doing is proactively participating in the big data economy. Problem with that is you're not on Facebook around the clock, as much as it may appear that you are. But guess what the IoT can do for you? Suddenly you have your sleep habits monitored, you have your driving habits, you have the sensors inside your clothes, how you're working out, how much you sweat, what your temperature is of your skin. They have retinal scanners that you see when you walk into a store that can look at your eyes and how you respond to a product or a service when you see it. And all of a sudden that data starts getting collected. And that can lead to a whole new level of personalization and experiences. Because now companies can focus on targeting you. And you remember what I said earlier. When you get ads in your feed, right? When you're in Facebook and those ads pop up and they're not something you actually want, they're really intrusive, right? It bothers you. You're like, why am I getting this crap on my feed? But when you're thinking about going on vacation and suddenly that ad for that trip to Hawaii pops up and they found you those flights that were at a rate that you couldn't find on your own, and they were right there in the right moment at the right time, suddenly you go, that's a lot of value. Maybe a little creepy still, but that's a lot of value. And that's what all that additional data can do. So now it's not only the way we participate with data, but it's the way we live our lives. They collect data, and then are able to use it to create more personalized experiences. And the 9 is that you're seeing the smart machines in AI. Now, I heard a really great quote from the CTO of SAS last week, and he said, artificial intelligence is mostly just artificial and very little intelligence at this point. And it was a great quote because it was so profoundly simple. But what's true is most and much of what we're hearing about today is artificial intelligence. A lot of it is just programming and automation. So it's still very much in its infancy, which supports most of what you were saying, Barry. But it is taking off in a big way. And, I give the simple example. You said chatbots are very overstated. I agree with that. What they can do is still very overstated. But for a lot of companies, the introduction of a chatbot into your business ecosystem is a big opportunity. And why? Because I went back and I said 1/3 of people want a 30-minute response. 2/3 of people want a response within 1 hour. And the rest of everybody expects to be responded to within 24 hours. So if you can suddenly move up the total quality of your people and say those very simple, very frontline questions could be handled by a bot, for instance, in our business, and then we can take the people we have to focus them on bigger, real customer problems instead of answering simple things that something like a bot can answer, we can up the experience, up the quality, while using something as simple as a chatbot to introduce AI into our businesses. These are just examples of simple ways AIs are going to start to play a role inside of this next 12 months for us. This full automation AI, driverless cars, I am of the same prescriptive ideas as the former speakers, but I basically think we're still 10 years away. So my 11-year-old will drive. She will drive a car. My 15-year-old will definitely drive if she stops acting out. However, my 9-month-old son, my prediction is he will never drive a car. If he does, it will be a novelty, not a day-to-day activity for him. Don't ask me how I ended up with a 15 and 11-year-old and a 9-month-old, but I'll tell you a couple things. 1, same marriage. Anybody that's wondering about that? And 2, I promised I'd get a little personal, so now you know. And the last one, and this is such an important one to me, is the company's destruction of silos. This is another cultural trend that needs to take place. But we have operational silos, finance silos. Just last night at dinner, I was talking to a really smart group of guys, and we were talking about the silos that take place between IT and marketing. And the connected organization still has IT working over here and marketing working over here and operations somewhere in between. And we heard about the failure of DevOps and why that's failed. And so much of it goes because we're still working in our little silos inside of a company. And companies that understand digital transformation are actually going to get trend 1 and trend 10 right before they get any of the others. They're going to get culture focused, and they're going to stop the segregation between their departments, because you're going to realize that customer experience doesn't happen in one department. It's not up to your sales department or your marketing department or your operations department. It's up to all of them. Everybody who puts on the hat, that puts on the shirt, that puts on the badge, that shows up to work each day is involved in creating the experiences for your customers. And experience starts within the walls of your own organization, and it permeates outward. And this is a really important thing to remember, because so much of us are trying to drive digital transformation through offering tech to our customers. But really, it comes down to embracing what technology can do to create great experiences and remembering that your first customers are your employees. So I want everyone to remember this one thing. No companies ever woke up in the morning and said, I want to go out of business in 3 years. In 2009, Jim Keyes did not wake up in the morning and say, God, I really hope Netflix puts me out of business in the next 36 months. So when you're thinking about the trends, when you're thinking about culture, when you're listening to all this, when you're looking at all these trends and you're becoming absolutely overwhelmed by data and information, remember, some of these core things about technology still come back to real, heartfelt business practices. It comes down to building strong cultures. It comes down to believing in customer and a customer-led organization. It comes down to embracing change and what's possible with change. And then it comes down to understanding all the things that technology can do, all the things that technology can do to help drive your business forward and into the future. And I want to thank you, everybody, very much. I hope to connect with you tomorrow.